Are oil companies reviewing their strategies around the world? It's a pleasure having Décio Odon, president at Enauta. We have a disclaimer. He does not speak as a representative of Enauta today, but as an engineer and an energy professional. Good afternoon, Décio Odon. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Cavan. It's always a pleasure being with you.
Thank you. Please let me show two slides to bring the first point to discussion to Décio uh, uh, give us his thoughts about that. So the first one is related to OPEC provision predictions for 2045. OPEC is saying that the consumption of oil will be around 116 million barrels per day. It's very curious, this number. But in the opposite, we have International Energy Agency saying that by 2030 it will be 77 million barrels per day, and by 2050 around 24 million barrels per day. So, Décio, my first point for you, please, is how companies can decide about investments and production with so different forecasts.
Well, these different forecasts they result from different views and views that reflect interests. OPEC represents the oil-producing countries, so they are expected to have a more bullish forecast for the oil consumption. And the International Energy Agency,
Energy Agency.
they kind of represent the developed countries, and they are completely engaged in the need, which I agree, of the energy transition.
Mhm.
And they have developed and disclosed a series of scenarios. A very famous one, maybe 2 years ago, in which they said that in order to reach net zero by 2050, the world should stop approving new oil and gas
Projects.
and hydrocarbons, no? Carbon, coal, oil, and gas, new projects. And I believe that what we have seen in the past few years is that the reality is in between, as people used to say. Uh, I don't believe that anyone sees a scenario in which a realistic scenario in which hydrocarbon dependency in energy mix, international energy mix, will drop so significantly until 2030 and 2040. And I believe that the hydrocarbons will be needed for long period from now. And companies, each one of the company, they have their own strategy, and these strategies connecting to the title of this discussion
Yeah.
is always changing.
Yeah, that. What's the history of the
Yeah,
strategies? Could you bring to
if we
us?
go back some decades, let's start with the first oil crisis in 2000 in 1973.
Uh-huh.
Oil price went up, jumped from $3 to $12, and then we have the price increase during the 70s. At that time, we were joining Petrobras in the. I joined in the 80s. You probably joined in the beginning of the 80s or the
Yeah,
end of the
yeah, the
70s.
same period.
Same generation. And then you remember that in 79, within the Iran-Iraq war, we had the second shock, and the price went to $41 a barrel. It was the highest price ever if you correct by inflation. And price they went down very sharply in 86. So we had a cycle of about 13 years of prices going up. Then prices were depressed from 86 to 99, 2000. I remember that oil price was $9 a barrel in
Wow, yeah,
1999. Gas
impressive.
price was 70 cents. When we were about to start the Bolivia Brazil pipeline, gas price was 76 cents. That was July 1999. And then we had China join the World Trade Organization, and the increasing the consumption in Asia, and prices starting going up. And then we had the boom of the commodities of the beginning of the 2000s. And price went up until 2008, and then we had the financial crisis.
Yes.
Remember, price was $147 in July 2007.
Yeah.
But this disruption of the financial crisis, it lasted until 2010, and then prices increased again until 2014 when they dropped. So all of this to say that cycles at that time, they were very, very long. 73, 86, 13 years going up. 86, 79, 99, 13 years, price depressed. 2000, 2014, 14 years, high price. So under these circumstances, we had the companies having, especially the big ones, having a lot of time to plan and to organize large projects because they have very long cycles. So volatility was not that important, that present at that time. And then the world changed. It started changing with the shale revolution, because the shale brought dynamics to the market. Before the shale, we lived under the umbrella of the peak oil theory. Remember?
Remember.
Oil is scarce, demand is always grow, supply will gonna be tight, so price will gonna increase. And then all of a sudden we had the shale revolution, and the shale brought supply, a lot of supply. So the uncertainty was not no longer supply. And then we had the Paris Agreement 2015, and then the need for the energy transition, and then we start discussing not peak oil, but peak demand.
Yeah.
Remember that after the pandemic, that the former CEO of BP, Bernard Looney, said that for BP, peak oil has already occurred.
Yeah.
They were wrong, because the demand in 2023 is higher than in 2019. But at that time, 1 or 2 years ago, they were saying that we have already crossed peak demand. So now we are in a world in which we discuss peak demand. And organizations like the agency, International Energy Agency, say that we must control supply, stop oil projects.
Yeah.
So how companies have behaved in this scenario? So volatility now is king. We have volatility because we have the supply of the shale that can disrupt supply. If prices are very high, you see a lot of supply from shale, and we have doubts about demand. So life is much more difficult for companies now, because it's much more difficult to predict. Besides the cycles being shorter, there is uncertainty on the future demand of crude oil. So it's much more difficult. So what the large companies are doing? We have seen two different approaches. The Europeans, a few years ago, they start to invest heavily in renewables. We have seen mostly Equinor and Total and Shell, other companies, investing in wind farms in the North Sea. Some investments in the US recently, but not that successful. And solar, you have Equinor with projects of solar in Brazil, Total investing in batteries as well, and clearly betting on the energy transition. You can say that about Repsol, Shell,
But
Eni.
the
The
volumes
European,
are, yeah, that's true, but the volumes of renewables are not enough, are
no,
still very low.
of course they are not enough. But the returns are not enough as well. So what we have seen recently is a change in strategy, especially in Shell and BP,
That's a good point.
coming back to invest in hydrocarbons. You have seen the Total as well, Namibia, the new frontier. On the other hand, you see the Americans, basically Exxon and Chevron.
Chevron,
They are not betting on the energy transition and renewables. Their bet is on consolidation, and they are doing important M&As in the US,
yeah,
consolidation in the US.
strong ones. Has and
And yeah, Hess and Pioneer. And then you see their bet on carbon capture. So you mentioned that Exxon is drilling for lithium, but I mean their most important bet is
carbon
on
capture
carbon capture,
on the
which will
production
be
side.
which will be the same. I mean, if you use the hydrocarbons, you are able to capture the carbon. There is no carbon in the atmosphere, so
Yeah, yeah,
no,
that's right.
it's an alternative. Then you have Petrobras, who now with the new plan that they announced very recently, a few days ago.
With a strong position in renewables,
Yeah, about 10% of the
the
11% of the
budget.
capex in
Yeah.
renewables. And you have the independents, and I am CEO of one Brazilian independent. I think that all these moves that we have seen, they create opportunity for the independents. When you look at what happened in the North Sea and the Gulf of Mexico, but especially in the North Sea, we have seen from in the last few years and decades that the mature fields, they were divested by the original company that discovered the field and developed the field, normally a large company like a major. And then after some time, the costs increase, and they sell to a second company to extract more benefits from the field. And then we have some examples that we are in the fourth or fifth owner of the field, always having a new company trying to get more oil from the same old oil field.
Mhm.
We haven't seen that in Brazil because Petrobras was a monopoly, and Petrobras started divesting from mature fields very recently, and that created a new market in Brazil. We have several new companies. Some of them are
Northeast part of the country,
yes,
onshore operations.
onshore and offshore as well, but mostly onshore. And we have a new public listed companies in Brazil that were created after acquiring Petrobras assets. So for these companies, this movement of the majors creates opportunities for them to acquire mature assets and to extract value from those assets. I see the Brazilian market with a lot of companies, small companies. Our business is a business of scale. We need scale to to have a competitive cost of capital, and it has been more difficult for oil companies to raise capital recently because of all these discussions on the energy transition. So I see consolidation in front of us in the Brazilian market. The company that I manage, Enauta, is a kind of different than the others because we have a tradition to be in business for a long time, 20 years, and we have producing fields already without we haven't acquired anything from Petrobras recently, and we are developing a deep water field, green field in Atlanta, but we are prepared
To the new
to
phase.
look at opportunities. But we see that all these changes, they force companies to adapt their strategies day to day,
Yeah.
on a very frequent basis, because
Yeah. Yeah.
this volatility that we have seen in the
Yeah.
market, and I believe that the volatility is here to stay
To
in
stay.
the oil
Yeah.
markets, will be key for companies adapting the strategy.
And that's with these uncertainties that we have in the oil sector, and considering that exploration is a very important phase for future production, are companies continuing to invest in exploration, or they are, let's see, with a less investments in exploration, more in production development? What's going on with the
Very
companies?
good question, Kavan. Very good question, because when the oil cycles, price cycles were long, and we lived under the uncertainty of supply, so the natural strategy for the companies, large and small, independents, was to explore. And that's why we have seen exploration in frontier basins.
Yeah.
In Alaska, in Siberia, in West Africa, in Campos Basin initially, deep water, and then the pre-salt, and Guyana, and Namibia, and so on. So that's why companies were looking for additional barrels and long-term barrels. I mean, barrels that will take long to be developed.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why when we had the first wave of IPOs in Brazil, we have seen a series of failures. And Alto is the only remaining independent from that period, because the others, they bet on exploration, only on exploration, and they failed in finding the fields they expected to find, and we know the story.
The names.
And then the large companies, the majors, they start to change their strategy and to be very selective, very, very selective in exploration, betting on large potential bases. We have these examples. The pre-salt, Namibia, as I said, Guyana. There was a well drilled by Exxon with us in Sergipe, Alagoas in Brazil, but aiming for large discoveries. We don't see the majors doing exploration in mature basins, going after small new oil fields.
Mm-hmm.
And then we see a lack of exploration because of all these movements, because we don't have the majors anymore. They are independent. Most of them, they don't have the will or the capital to invest in exploration.
Uh-huh.
So what we have seen here, especially talking about Brazil, we haven't seen exploration. So in addition to the pre-salt, which was disappointing in the recent years in terms of results,
Mm-hmm.
we don't have a single well, exploratory well, drilled offshore in Brazil outside the Campos and Santos Basin. I would say in the last 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
We probably see a well from Petrobras in Potiguar Basin now, offshore, deep offshore, and we have that discussion on the equatorial margin. But we don't have exploration being executed in Brazil. The only well that I remember is the one that we drilled with Exxon, unfortunately, a dry hole in 2022 in Sergipe.
Yeah. But this point is very sensitive, because considering that renewables are not replacing very well oil demand and consumption, and that there are not exploration enough to, let's say, guarantee the future of oil consumption, and the consumption may be very, let's say, stable for the next decades.
That's
So
what I see.
what can you see in terms of oil price for the future?
Well, I see problems ahead of us.
Yeah.
Because there is a lot of opinions. I have seen opinions saying that it's not more exploration is not needed. I tend to disagree. I think we still need some exploration. Not the level of exploration that we had 10 years ago, but we still need some exploration. But on the other hand, in addition to that, you have all these analyses saying that we should stop oil, stop approving new oil projects. If we do that, the result will be, if we try to control supply without touching demand, and you said that the renewables are not replacing the demand for energy. What we see in the world is an increased demand for energy. We talk about electrification as the solution for the energy transition, decarbonization. Very good. But we have 700 million people in the world without access to electricity. We have 2 billion people that still use biomass to cook, and it's unsafe in terms of the air quality inside the house.
The homes.
And we have a million of people that suffer lung disease because of that worldwide. So, pragmatically speaking, we will still need oil and gas. So, if we try to stop production of oil and gas, what the result will be, the demand will be there, so the price will increase. And if the price increases, what we will see? We will see inflation, and inflation affecting the poor. Always inflation
Always first.
impacts more on the poor people. And then if you have a higher price, inflation, you probably will have a higher level of social unrest, which is very bad as well. So the option to reduce the offer of energy, for me, is the wrong one. It will be very complex. Very precipitated and very complex solution. So I don't believe that this will be the solution. This idea that the energy transition would be easy, quick, painful, without pain, cheap. No, that's wrong. It will be difficult. It will be hard. It will be longer than expected. It's necessary, and must be coordinated. I mean, in a certain point of time, we must be a combination of measures.
Mm-hmm.
Increase the supply of renewables, and then we have to face the idea of incentives or subsidies, or on the other hand, establish a price on the carbon. If you look at the European model, is a price on carbon. If you look at the US model, the Inflation Reduction Act, is subsidies for the renewable.
But subsidies cannot live for.
So and then you have the question of energy security and energy affordability. So there's no way. So you must incentivize renewables to diminish the demand for oil and gas. You have to incentivize energy efficiency and new technologies like carbon capture. So I believe that the energy transition will be a combination of a series of measures.
More an addition than a transition.
An addition. Because without addition, totally. there will be no transition.
No transition. Décio, a few days ago, I saw International Energy Agency. They did a speech, meeting, forcing oil companies to stop oil exploration and to invest in renewables. Does it make sense for oil companies to invest hardly in renewables?
Well, what I have seen recently is that the returns are not there. If the returns are not there, it's difficult to convince. Second, it's a long-term process. Everybody agrees that we must reduce the dependency on hydrocarbons, that we must reduce the level of emissions, and ideally reducing the content of carbon in the atmosphere. But everybody wants to do that without paying. So, and when the problems occur, nobody discuss energy transition. I give one example. A week ago, we had this very heavy heat wave in Brazil. Temperature is very high, to a point that we had to connect the coal power plants that we have in Nordeste, in Northeast, to the grid, Brazilian grid. Remember that?
Yes.
So we had to increase emissions. Did you hear anybody complaining about that?
No, nobody.
So when the time comes, when the need comes, nobody questioned the fact that we had increased emissions and turned on the coal power plants.
Yeah.
Because it was necessary. So we must face reality. We must face the need of the people and the immediate need of the people.
Mhm.
It's very difficult to
deal with this.
Very difficult. Everybody's in favor of reducing the carbon emissions. Everybody's in favor of energy transition, but nobody wants to disconnect the mobile phone. Nobody wants to reduce their own emissions.
Yeah,
no one is prepared
petrochemicals.
to avoid turning on the lights when they get home.
Yeah.
So what's the solution for that? There is just one solution: to increase the energy supply, and to do that with the minimum carbon emissions that we can.
Yeah.
And not trying to reduce the energy supply. If we do that, we will create chaos.
That's going to the conclusions. May I say that the main target for one of the main targets for the oil companies with new strategies could be carbon capture, still exploring a little bit more than today, and going with not too fast to renewables.
I would say that it's a combination. For the oil companies, it's first reducing emissions, facing the methane emissions, that it's important.
Yeah.
Focusing in producing barrels that are more effective in terms of, more efficient in terms of carbon emissions. We can do that. Innovate and capture carbon, reduce the emissions, and start investing in renewables for the companies that they have the balance sheet for that, the big companies. I think that that's what I would do if I were in charge of defining portfolios of large companies or policies.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And let's survive with oil for a long time.
We must, otherwise we will see supply difficulties
and reducing of life quality, that we need petrochemicals, we need lights, we need everything.
But be sure that the society is not prepared for that.
Yeah.
Ask
right.
all these activists that are in favor of stopping oil if they are prepared to stop consuming oil products.
Yeah, perfect.
They are not.
Yeah.
They don't say that. They are not.
They are not. Thank you so much. CEO at Tenalta, Décio Oddone, thank you for this nice conversation.
Always a pleasure. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.